Alright, so I got another request on another video to add in the series, and the next video would be the perfect place for this. The guy asked me, he said, can you show us how to do a soil sample? You know, now Pete's already kind of showed that, but I'm also going to add my spin on it. You know, doing a soil sample, it's kind of like, how do I relate it? Well, one of my hobbies, favorite things to do is sharpshooting, sniping, whatever you want to call it. And it's a very, very strict discipline in the fact that everything, and I mean absolutely everything, must be consistent and perfect. So it's a discipline that you never truly perfect 100%. There's always something to perfect in that discipline. You know, your powder charges, the way your round is seated, the way it goes into the gun, your gun, the way you address the gun. All of these variables play into the consistency. So how does that tie into this? Well, your soil sample is the same way. Remember, you are trying to take averages over an acre in something that's called a plow furrow slice. Basically what that means is one plow for a given width going to a certain depth when it turns over the land. I think, I'm not for sure, but I think they figure that on a 16-inch plow, because that's kind of the standard of plows, but I could be wrong. So basically, in an acre's worth of land at a 6-inch depth plow furrow slice, you will have approximately 2 million pounds of soil. In a 3-inch depth, you're going to have somewhere around 1 million pounds of soil. So you can all of a sudden see, when we start talking millions, and we average that over that much, that large of a number, then what happens is we get to where the slightest little change could make a difference. So what we do is we make sure that we put the probe, or whatever method we're using, deep into the ground at the exact same depth. 6 inches is ideal. You can go 4, but whatever you have to do, whatever you choose to do, you have to remember that that's going to become your new consistent depth to keep everything consistent from this year's to next year's soil test. Now, I've been asked, well, how do you take the test? There is no given number of samples in a given area that you have to take. But again, remember, if you go back to your years in grade school, the more grades you had, the better you had on average if you had a lower number. You know, if you had, say, only 10 grades in a 6 weeks period, and you got 1 0, that's going to impact you far more negatively than if you had 20 grades and you got a 0. So to kind of give you a baseline of where this is going. If you look, you will see I've got little yellow flags all over my yard here. I want to just sample my front yard. All right. Notice that it's completely random in the traverse. There is no, you do not have to be consistent in how you're going to take them per se. The only thing that has to be consistent is the depth. Now the ground's frozen today. I'm not going to take every one of these samples, but if I were to take them, this is exactly how it would look. I would just randomly walk and pull them. You can use a little hand trowel. You can do that. The only thing is you have bigger holes in your yard when it's said and done. But 2 tools I like to use is the soil probe, and as you see, it's got a hollow in it where you could take the core out, and then the drill method. Now I am going to take a few samples with the drill method, but let's use the probe for example. Notice I have marked where my 6-inch depth is, and I'm going to do it here, hopefully where it's soft enough. I'm going to go down to where that mark is, and then I'm going to pull the sample. Now, because I've got so much mulch, it just packed. What you will do is you will take your finger, you push that little core out, you collect the cores, you put them in a bucket, you mix them up and you crush them, let them dry, and then send them off to whoever your soil sample guy is. This by far is the easiest method. Now what I did is I just took a bucket, drilled a hole, put an 1.25 inch coupling in it, and then epoxy glued it so that it will stay. There is actually a guy, and I'll try and cite it in this video, that actually makes a bucket and a kit to do this. All this is just a standard wood bore, 1-inch diameter. And I've marked it to my 6-inch depth plus the thickness of this bucket. And I'm going to show you how well this works. So let's just go over here to where we're going to take one of our core samples. Alright, I'm going to set down my bucket. I'm going to come grab my trusty drill here. And all I'm going to do, just like that. Now again, the ground is kind of frozen. It's not working as good. But if you had a good soft ground, more soil is going to come up than what you saw. So let's try it again. So see, the ground is very wet. It's hard for it to bring it out and throw it out like it's supposed to. But if you look, in just 4 samples, I've already gotten a handful of soil. Okay. So what will happen is I will let this dry out. Anything like this grass and stuff, it will come out of it. We'll throw that out of it. But we'll let this dry out, kind of crush it up a little bit, make it a little bit finer than what it is. You know, we don't want clods like that. We want it more like what's right here, with smaller particles. So that is actually the way I take the soil samples on my customers' jobs, because I can get out with a drill and it don't matter how dry or how wet it is, and I can pull these samples in a fraction of the time that I can with this probe here. I do keep a probe on the truck, however, because I don't always have my drill with me, and that allows me to take tests at a last minute's notice if I need to. Been asked, how frequently do you test? That's going to be based on your conditions. Let's say you take your first soil test, and let's say you have a pH that's real low, and let's say you also have a potassium and phosphorus deficiency. You would make the correction, and then before you did anything in the fall, you would take another soil test. If the soil test is what you want, then that becomes your baseline. If it is not what you want, then you will again in the springtime, about every 6 months, take the test again after you've made the necessary adjustment. Once you have established your baseline, then what you have to do at first is try and see what taking a test every 2 years will do. If don't much change in 2 years, that's great. Yet that can become your baseline. You may could even push it out to 3 years, but no more than 3 years is how far you want to go between soil tests. If you got it to where you want it and in a year's time it kept changing, then you're going to be taking that test every year because something's going on in your soil and you're just going to have to do that to keep everything balanced in the way it should be. Do not trouble yourself when you get your soil test with the micronutrients at first. If the macronutrients are off, the macronutrients need to be addressed first, correct them, and then you can start tweaking the micronutrients. You can do some of the tweaking while you're doing the micronutrient correction, but it's just going to be easier for the beginner to focus on one thing and then work their way up. So if you tie everything we've done in this series so far, you've now seen how to interpret the test. You've now seen how to take the soil sample for the test. You tie all of this together. Now the next video that's going to get done is actually going to be the math behind how we're going to take that soil test and correlate it to everything you've seen in the first 6 parts of this series to make the soil correction. And this is where everything's going to finally come together and make sense, and you'll go, oh, okay, now I'm kind of getting it. I kind of understand where it's at. But remember, consistency is key. And I don't mean so much in the placement of the holes, but like if you decide to quarter your yard up and just do a quarter of the yard at a time, then you make sure you do the exact same quarters every time in your test. If not, you're going to get all confused and twisted up. I recommend keeping the test, maybe keeping a journal. Take each test and attach it into a notebook and then note what it was you did to make the corrections for that test. Because if something doesn't work, you need to know what to come back to and go, okay, what do I need to correct? Yes, there is a science to correcting your soil. There is. However, each soil is almost like a fingerprint. It is unique. What I tell you will work for this yard is not necessarily going to work for the yard right over there or 10 miles from here. Each yard is going to be unique and different in its biology, in its microclimate, and everything. So when you ask, what if I make this soil change, you're asking me, or you're asking Peter, you're asking whoever, when I make the soil change, understand we're giving you very generic, this is how we do it across the board adjustments. But your particular soil may require you to do something more specific to it. It may be abundant in calcium, or it may be abundant in free lime, and you may have to throw more sulfur to the yard than you would the average yard. So I hope this answers your questions towards the how to do the soil test. This is my way of doing it. Pete, he's done a video for it. I would suggest you look at that one as well. The reason I say it, Pete's said it numerous times, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and his way to skin the cat may be easier to you than my way to skin the cat. So, you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, by all means, drop me a line. I've enjoyed the feedback. I've enjoyed y'all telling me, hey, what about this, what about that? And I will try and answer everything I can as best to my knowledge. Till next time, guys, thanks again.